everyone, I hope that you're having a good day. In this video, I'll be covering the best answers given on the Ask Me Anything that Larian Studios just did on Reddit, where they talked about a bunch of things related to Divinity and the future of their games. Now, you may recall a little while back, Jason Schreier did an interview with Swen Vincke talking about generative AI in the usage of their games, which Sven actually expanded on and gave a really good answer that I want to talk about. So, this question here by Priceless Pennies. First, I want to say I loved your games, played Divinity Original Sin 2. What is your opinion of generative AI in the game development process for your studio in particular? There's certain game studios like Embark and Warhost, as well as several East Asian ones like Everstone that seem relatively optimistic, and they've talked about using it to make the games bigger and faster. On the other hand, a lot of studios and a lot of gamers think it predominantly undermines the creative process and cuts corners. So yeah, Swen Vincke said yes, there's not going to be any generative AI art in Divinity. So this is a little bit different from the previous statement they gave, and I'm actually very happy to see. And this is kind of why it's important to voice your concerns when things like this do happen. I know there's been a lot of discussion around using AI tools as a part of concept art exploration. We already said that this doesn't mean that the actual concept art is generated by AI, but we understand it created confusion. So, to ensure there's no room for doubt, we've decided to refrain from using Gen AI tools in concept art development. I think this is really good personally myself because it kind of makes things like a mind flare. It takes the soul out of it if you're taking art from others and using it in your creation, but I digress. There's a lot of other opinions out there. AI is a very nuanced topic. I just don't think that in concept art creation they should be using stuff like that, and they even said themselves they weren't seeing very much results from using it. But they did this so that there's no discussions about the origin of the art. And I think this is important. I actually did a video just recently talking about Expedition 33 and how they accidentally left AI art in the game at launch. A lot of people were sour about it because why do you need placeholders AI? Anyways, having said that, we continuously try to improve the speed in case we try things out. The more iterations we can do, the better the general gameplay is. We think that Gen AI can help us with this, so we're trying things out across departments. Our hope is that it can aid us and refine ideas faster, leading to more focused development cycle, less waste, and ultimately a higher quality game. The important thing to note is that we will not generate creative assets that end up in a game without being 100% sure about the origins of the training data and the consent of those who created data. 10 out of 10 response, I think that is really good. If we use a Gen AI model that creates in-game assets, it'll be trained on the own data that we own. So yeah, that is actually a pretty big switch up, and I think it's a good change because they actually said themselves that there was no real benefit they found from using AI to speed up the process in things like concept art. And honestly, again, I just don't think that concept art should have AI in it because you got a lot of artists and they actually bought an art studio to help out with the creation of AI art. Now, I actually did talk about this and I had to delete my video because I was getting harassed on a variety of different social media platforms. It was incredibly frustrating because I was saying the exact same things that Jennifer English and Neil Newbun were saying, and I referenced it in the video, but people just bring out their pitchforks the moment that AI is mentioned and think that I was attacking them. But I just want to make it very clear, I was just saying that Gen AI should not have a place in the concept art creation, and that's literally what other people that, like, literally Shadowheart and Astarion from Baldur's Gate 3 were saying. This was incredibly frustrating for myself because I was not saying anything different from what they were also saying, and people just, again, get very aggressive over topics like this. Now, again, I did say in the video there are some decent uses for AI, like if you're fixing animations and more stuff we'll get into in this video. So again, it's a very nuanced topic, and I hope no one gets angry about this because, yeah, they literally said they're going to stop doing that because it hasn't been working out for them. And again, it kind of taints the waters a bit if you're going to be using that kind of stuff in the most creative, I want to very clarify this, the creative part of game design when you're making concept art. So that is great. There's a bunch of other answers here, and actually the writing director also said this applies to the writing as well. We don't have any text generation touching our dialogue, journal entries, or other writing in Divinity. And how does generated placeholder text benefit the development over a simple stub text? It doesn't. So this is another thing that's good because they did say previously that they're going to use AI to create subtext and things like that. That, again, it's a slippery slope when these are used. They had a limited group experimenting with tools to generate text, but the results were a 3 out of 10 at best, which is, again, a lot of the times, that's really the experience with AI. They did it for research purposes, not for use in Divinity. Even in my worst drafts, there's a lot of them, or at least a 4 out of 10. Sven might disagree. But yeah, that is good. They're not going to be using that, and that was something, another point that was brought up often regarding this. Now, another question is, how does the art team feel about the usage of AI? This is their art director answering this one here. Can we walk us through the process more specifically, and if it's helping them in efficiency? Will it remain a part of the development process? And Alina says it can't speak for everyone, but we have a very diverse and international team, and each person has their own opinions on the matter. But in terms of production, we don't use AI to generate art assets. Great. We see AI as a potential tool to optimize certain workflows. For example, it can be used for motion capture data cleanup or retargeting animations from the actor's original performance capture, as was already mentioned in the AMA. We don't want to use AI to make game assets, generate models, or even base models to sculpt on top of, because those assets will never meet the quality bar we're setting for the art in Divinity. This is literally what I was saying in my last video, is that anyways, they also are saying the same things that I did. We have also decided to stop using AI in the concept art as a reference material, so there's no ambiguity about the nature of our assets. That said, any generated concept art in the game was never our intention either. That's good. This was kind of different from what was said, and again, could be a bit of a translation issue, and maybe Sven, when he was talking, was meaning something a little bit different. And again, back to this point here, if you read through it, Sven is literally saying that this is a tech-driven industry, so you need to try things. Now moving on to Gabriel here, who is their machine learning director, a pretty big fan of your games, just heartened to hear the discourse and statements about AI usage and development of this product. Can you lay out the way this is going to be implemented? So this is all new technology. I totally understand why it's difficult to see where the positives are. We believe machine learning is a powerful tool to accelerate and make game development more efficient and streamlined. This means that our creatives have more time doing the work that makes their jobs rewarding, and the game is a richer experience. An important bit to note is that we do not generate creative assets that end up in the game without being 100% sure of the origins and the training data and the consent of those who created the data. Now, if you know anything about LLMs, large language models, you need a lot of data for it to actually put out something like usable. But with over 1,000 lines scheduled to be in the game, 100,000 lines, recorded by hundreds of actors, and even 100,000s more will be recorded that will not end up in the game, there are useful tools for us to reduce the mechanical legwork and free up time for our teams that would be bogged down with the task getting this in the way of what they will really want to do. Additionally, our research and development team monitors and experiments with anything that is state-of-the-art and might influence game development pipelines in the future. This is important because we make our own engine. But we draw the line in the sand too. We are committed in our actors' agreements to not use the recordings to train or build our AI modelers. This is literally what Neil Newbaum was talking about as well, because we're aware of how sensitive it would be to artificially generate an actor's voice. Even if an actor is willing, and we compensate them, we don't feel comfortable with using an AI voice in our games, which is really good to see. Now, they were actually asking for some more context on this. So when we record lines, we record audio and videos, and motion capture at the same time. It needs to be actually converted into animation data, join data in a 3D space over time for one of our species or rigs. If you want more specific, so for instance, if an actor is playing a character that is a dwarf, that animation needs to be adjusted to accommodate the physics of that race. This is something you see in Baldur's Gate 3, and you see it in really every game out there right now, because it kind of is an important part of game design to, again, speed up processes. Traditionally, this was done by hand animators in one animation at a time. It's repetitive and boring work, so that's kind of why that stuff is being used. That's not really, again, that's not going to be burning down the rainforest and anything with that kind of usage of AI, and it'd be done in-house typically. So again, if anyone wants to get out of the pitchforks, that's not something to get upset over, because that's literally how it's been done, and it's not really that disruptive. And again, it's the way the industry is. Now, they actually answered a bunch of other questions. So how can you prevent 100%, not 99.9%, that your game will not have any AI in the end product? This is a big problem that's been popping up with games a lot, because again, you can't control every single person that works in your company, so there can be things that will slip through. It's really a slippery slope. And Gabriel responded with, so the assets to actually generate to be used in the game are incredibly limited. Actually, there's only currently one, adding motion to voice recordings where we don't have motion capture data that improves the quality of the game. Makes sense. So if you didn't have the motion capture work, it's better than having the animations look really janky, and that's what a lot of people like to complain about with games. So in this usage, it makes a lot of sense. We're experimenting with ways to help us prototype faster so we can bounce ideas more quickly. None of it is put into production because we're still in a research and development phase, because like a lot of this stuff is, but if it gets deployed, it wouldn't be used to write final letters and generate final assets. It would be exclusively for rapid prototyping and iteration. Kind of sounds like, I don't know. We'll have to see, I guess, how that all comes about. Part of the design system includes strict guardrails to ensure nothing would be used during prototyping can ship. All assets involved would be clearly marked as stub and get purged afterwards. This intent of this pipeline is not to use any of the assets in any step of the asset creation pipeline. It's all about testing flow. Now, this is actually something that came back to bite Larian Studios, creators of Expedition 33, because there was some placeholder text or placeholder images that were placed on a poll. It was AI, very clearly AI. It looked like garbage, and people noticed it quickly. It was patched out in the first week, but the big problem here, and I think that's kind of what Gabriel was talking about, is that how can you ensure like all 100% of assets end up getting removed? Well, they're going to be doing a stub of that so that that kind of stuff doesn't happen. And that's good, because again, it's just such a slippery slope for that stuff to happen. So there's a few other questions, actually a lot that I want to talk about, but I don't want to make this video too long. He's the creator, or the machine learning director, so there is a team to support development by helping solve concrete problems through automation. The second is prepare ourselves for the future, in which machine learning will help drive reactivity to player agency. This one's interesting. I'm curious to see how that's going to work out in a game. They did obviously talk about how it's going to help out with the automation of animations, but reactivity to player agency, I think that can be kind of interesting. And yeah, I went through all this. There's a lot of really good answers. One current example of machine learning generated assets that end up in the game, and that is within our cinematics and animation pipeline. In this pipeline, we try to capture the actors' performances as best we can, so we use machine learning models to clean up and retarget and even add motion when it's not motion captured. These models are exclusively trained by Larian data. So that's, again, good. It's a local model. And this is another interesting one. This one's from Swen, actually, Vincke, the game director. So there's actually 411 people at the end of Baldur's Gate 3, and we have around 500 people working on Divinity now. They also recently bought an art studio, so they got a lot of stuff in the pipeline, which I think is really nice. Also, Divinity 3 will be the biggest project yet. Divinity takes everything we learned from Baldur's Gate 3 and 2, or Divinity Original Sin 2, and improves from there. In regards to Baldur's Gate 3, I think the main thing will be more agency and a rule set that was made for video gaming, in addition to higher production values. Oh, and some really cool friends to meet. He also said in regards to Baldur's Gate 3, there's going to be more agency in Divinity and more consequences. We don't know ourselves how big it'll be. We're still making it. He did say previously that it will be bigger in Baldur's Gate 3, and I can see that. Obviously, they're still in the work of making it, so we'll have to wait and see. But more dialogue in Divinity than in Baldur's Gate 3 is kind of huge. We're in full production mode, so we have truckloads of work. We won't see any gameplay material anytime soon, likely. This is actually another thing I wanted to bring up because someone commented on one of my videos. There was a report of harassment on Blue Sky, and Swen actually looked into it. I want to give them a big shout out for like actually caring about their staff, because they went in and did a full investigation. There's no allegation resembling the description that was ever reported by anyone, or did anyone in the team see this. Unfortunately, there's a lot of people that like to talk online and make things up, unfortunately. So I'm really glad that he actually investigated this and put through. He also expands on they have a lot of channels to make sure that none of this kind of stuff can happen. And honestly, it seems like Larian is an amazing place to work. So that's really good. The door remains open should they wish to reach out. Great on Swen for that. Also, multiplayer, that's a big thing that's going to make their games in total. It takes a lot more time for them to actually make these games. We hate railroading and want you to have total freedom, but still experience a compelling narrative. We learned a lot from Baldur's Gate 3, and they're going to be applying those, which is really nice. Anything in particular excited for players' experience in this game? There's a lot, but we prefer to show and not tell. That said, Lizard romance seems to be, it's going to be popular. If you watch the Divinity trailer, there is a moment where you see a lizard bouncing on it crazy style. So yeah, go check that out if you're curious. But Baldur's Gate 3 for Switch 2, would have loved to, but it's not our decision to make. That was another thing that was heavily rumored, and I kept saying I don't think that's going to happen. As someone that's had a Steam Deck, Baldur's Gate 3 runs on it. The Switch 2 is a little bit different in terms of its aspects, but that would have been a lot of work for them when they likely want to just work on their next game. Another thing here, so just talking about the negative feedback, it's often a writer's DNA to listen to the negative feedback. We're sensitive souls. I would never let my team bow to pressure. And this is kind of in regards to how they changed Will throughout the early access of Baldur's Gate 3 and ended up changing his character completely. And that's something they acknowledge, like, we don't always make the right decisions, but any narrative and characterization are complex beasts, so it's rarely a single writer making any major change. And we don't take any changes lightly because the knock-on effect, even a small adjustment, can be enormous. And that's something that a lot of people talk about with Will and how his story actually changed. Another thing I want to talk about is the deluxe edition. I've been trying to get my hands on one of these, nearly impossible, but obviously there's a lot of hard to get high-quality bits and bobs everywhere in the world. But they built these things by them. They're sent by us and directly to yourselves. I think that's the right direction. They're working on getting more channels to actually get this done, but I think this would be really nice, and they'll do a future community update to go in more detail, so I'm curious to see that. And also about the Divinity statue before the Game Awards, their immediate reaction was anger and disappointment whenever it did leak, because I even did a video on it, because everybody was talking about it. They registered the Divinity handle, like they didn't have the website domain or handles or anything, and they filed it for copyright protection, and that's how it all got out. But there's human beings behind this. The most important, we have faith in the building and what you're building with. It's only video games. We'll be more careful. At the same token, we try to appreciate as every game that we've done is leaked and went into critical success, so I guess it's a good omen. It's kind of sad they're angry and disappointed by it, because so many people were excited by that when it leaked. Like, I was like literally jumping up and down, but yeah, I can understand, like, they wanted it to be a secret, and it kind of got out of the bag. And here's another question, just talking about it. They were very paranoid about people figuring out it was them with the statue, but yeah, I think it was in their favor because that was really exciting. Another question here, will Divinity be more cinematic like Baldur's Gate 3 or more of the top-down like Divinity Original Sin 2? We do have an incredibly talented team of cinematics and our animators, I wouldn't hold them back to be doing what they do best. I can see it kind of being similar to Baldur's Gate 3 in a certain sense. They also do explain in some of these, in some of the questions that they are looking at mods that have been made for Baldur's Gate 3, in particular UI mods and different changes like the WASD movement here potentially, and even the native camera tweaks, which I'm using to get right up close in my character's face here. So that's good. It actually shows that they're looking at what made, like what people wanted in mods to actually introduce in the game. I don't have that pulled up here, but that's just one thing I want to expand on. But yeah, you can read through the entire AMA if you want. I'll have that linked in the description because there's actually a lot of really good questions and answers here. And I didn't want to make this video too long, but I just want to talk about this because this was something that was like highly controversial that I said that Larian, I don't think they should be using generative AI in the concept art creation. And they went back on that because I guess, yeah, a lot of people don't like that. And it just made sense. They said it wasn't helping them out. So it's good to see that they went back and did right on that. So just wanted to highlight this because, yeah, I did get a lot of threats and some weird stuff happening. And again, I didn't say anything different from what Jennifer English and Neil Newbin were saying. So yeah, I just wanted to clarify that. So let me know your thoughts though on this and hit the subscribe button below if you enjoyed. We'll catch y'all in the next video.